Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaskar, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. I am Nivid Desai and we are on a journey of exploring the interesting intersections of numbers and narratives. This lecture is the beginning of an end. We are trying to synthesize all that we have learned in our module on audience analysis and bringing the entire module to a conclusion. In the two-part lecture, with this one and the next one, we will recall some key concepts that we learned and connect them with our wider base of knowledge. This lecture brings together all the key ideas from the module on audience analysis. It helps you understand how to synthesize your knowledge for audience types, mental models, reader-centric writing, and communication strategies into a holistic and practical mindset. All that we have seen so far have been sporadic discussions as skills, but with these two lectures, it will be my effort of trying to develop audience analysis not just as a set of skills, but also as a synthesized mindset. With this lecture, I'm trying to offer you a zoomed out perspective so that you can understand why audience understanding is not just a tool for writing, but a foundational skill for every part of your data science work. And that is why I am about to begin with one core question. Why audience understanding matters? Data science isn't just about models, predictions, and dashboards. It is about helping people understand and act on insights. And that requires one key skill: the ability to see through the audience's eyes. Whether you are writing a report, giving a presentation, or designing a dashboard, your effectiveness depends not on what you know, but on what your audience understands. So, for example, a churn model with 97% accuracy means nothing if the executive does not understand why customers are leaving. But a short explanation with a visual and a recommendation, let's re-engage inactive customers at day 10, this right here can directly drive action. And that's what we are here for, not just to communicate the rigor of our analysis, but to make it applicable, to make it relevant for technical and non-technical audiences. As we begin our recap, I would like you to start reflecting on this one little question. Think of a moment where something made sense to you only after someone explained it differently. What changed between your lack of understanding and the presence of your understanding? What kind of dynamic shift happened? And what did the communicator do in that moment to make it accessible for you? In this lecture, we will begin recollecting and reconnecting the threads that we have explored so far. Let's begin with our first few explorations in audience analysis. We first learned to ask, who is my audience? What do they know? What do they need? What do they expect and care about? These are core questions that helped us learn to distinguish between technical and non-technical audiences. If I think about it, this distinction was the first key insight that we derived from our entire exploration of audience analysis. That audience is not just one big chunk of people. We can divide them into a general broad category of technical and non-technical. We also learned to consider stakeholder roles such as business executives, developers, policymakers, and end users. All of them will have different stakes in our communication. And we learned to augment our communication based on their needs, their concerns, and the methods in which they will receive information best. Let's look at an example. A data scientist wants to see precision recall curves. A marketing manager wants to know how churn affects quarter four revenue. A customer service lead wants to know which customers are more likely to leave next month. All these insights arrive from your single analysis. But when we communicate that analysis, just the bird's eye view may not be efficient. We need to cater the kinds of questions that each audience brings to the table. So, each of these audience members bring about different curiosities, and we address them with our catered, tailored communication. We also saw how to structure the reports for different audiences, particularly technical and non-technical audiences. I would like to remind you of these structures as we wrap up our module. For the technical audience, we looked at this structure on your screen right now. Abstract, leading to introduction, methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. In our lecture discussing this structure, we saw how each of these sections caters different kinds of information. They ask and answer a variety of questions that help the audience locate the exact information that they are looking for. Once we established a structure to think about our technical audiences, we moved on to thinking about our non-technical audiences. We looked at key insights, recommendations, supporting data, and executive summary. This was our approach towards thinking about non-technical audience and the structures that they work with the best. Similar to the technical audience, we saw how each of these sections caters different varieties of information, and we also optimize not just for clarity, not just for technical accuracy, but also for utility and for time. That's right. We also optimize for compactness of information. Let's do a quick exercise to recall some of the skills that we have learned. You can choose one project that you worked on or you have imagined. Write down how 3 different audiences, from stakeholders in different roles, how might they see that project? They can be a technical audience or a non-technical audience. You are free to imagine any project and any kinds of audiences. Just try and exercise that muscle that we have developed. How will they view it differently? And how can you estimate what their view will be like? I will get back to you with the second thread that we have explored very soon. After the core fundamentals of audience analysis, we started diving deep into reader-centric writing. Reader-centric writing means making the writing useful and easy for the audience. In this domain, we practiced avoiding any jargon, starting with what the reader needs the most. We called it front loading of information, if you remember. Then we also practiced providing actionable insights, something that the reader can implement, can apply, and not just pure data. Here, let's look at an example to understand what we learned. Look at the first sentence. Customer inactivity increases churn risk. This is a writer-centric sentence because all that it is trying to do is communicate what the writer knows. And the writer always knows more than the reader, right? That is why there is a hierarchy of information and knowledge. What the writer has to do is design their communication in a way that the hierarchy dies down. That is when a reader-centric writing approach comes to play. That's what the second sentence looks like. If we reach out to inactive customers at day 7, we can reduce churn by 12%. If you look at that sentence, it offers the reader the information and the insight and the action that they need. It is not just about knowledge, it is also about actionability. It is about a recommendation and the result, the precise result of that recommendation. That is what makes writing reader-centric. Let's look at a quick reflection question before we move forward. Why does starting with the reader's need change how the whole message is received? Think about it. There is going to be a whole another audience at the other end of your communication. Why does starting with their needs in mind change and modify and evolve the way we write? How does it make it better? Think about it. I will get back to you with the third thread that we have pulled while thinking about audience analysis. The third thread that we explored was mental models, something that may be fresh in your memory from our last discussions. Mental models help us understand how our audience thinks. It also helps us understand how we ourselves think and how that may be different from our intended audience. We learned to recognize the 4 basic kinds of mental models. We looked at functional thinkers who care about how things work. We looked at outcome-based thinkers who care about results and decisions. We also learned about story-based thinkers, people who learn through a narrative. And then we looked at value-driven thinkers, those who focus on ethics, fairness, or a mission. Now, this may be dynamic with different roles, different responsibilities and designations. It may also change with age, with literacy, and with the levels of authority that a certain person occupies. So, one person's mental model may be static or it may be dynamic. We have also looked at different strategies to identify what our audience's mental model might be. I hope that we remember them, and I hope that we keep practicing them as we move forward. We also learned how to communicate across different mental models. We used layered explanations, analogies, and tailored messaging. All of this helped us bridge the gap between the way we look at the world and the way our intended audience may look at the world. There is, and there always will be, an inherent gap. But the job of a critical, dynamic communicator is to not let that gap hinder any communication, but to bridge it with a strategic, compassionate, and considerate way of approaching communication. Let's look at an example. To explain a simple AI tool, we will look at different kinds of audiences. If you want to explain it to a technical audience, you can say that it uses gradient boosting trees with grid search optimization, filled with jargon, filled with technical know-how, and the functions of the AI tool. If you want to cater to an executive audience, you can write something like this. It increases targeting accuracy by 20%. And at last, if you want to talk to the general public, they may prefer a story-based mental model. So you can say that it helps match users to what they care about while checking for bias. This combines both the story-based and the value-based mental models. To remind you of the skills that we have learned, here's a quick exercise. You can choose any insight. For example, retention improves the app engagement. This is a very common insight that has emerged from all our examples as well in the past. Now, write 3 versions for different kinds of mental models. We have learned about what these mental models are, what are they looking for in terms of information, and how to cater to them. So, this one insight, if you can convert it into different kinds of mental models, it'll be fun translating across different models and ensuring that each mental model becomes comprehensive. So this was a bird's eye view, some few quick recalls, some few quick highlights of all that we studied and the skills that we developed along the way. I hope that we retain all of this information by starting to apply them in our day-to-day communication. In the next lecture, we will look at some other highlights, some other key skills that we have developed along the entire module and help put them into a synthesized structure to gain understanding about how it makes sense in the larger picture. Stick around for that. The synthesis of audience analysis is not done yet. Think of this like an interval in a movie. I will be back with the second half of this lecture in the next class. Until then, stay curious, keep learning. I'll see you in the next class. Thank you so much. Namaskar.